Welcome, everybody, to today's Show Me 50 Lean In Circle, where we are going to cover fantastic content preparing for 2025, the ultimate career toolkit. So, welcome, and let's go ahead and get started. So, for those of you who may be new to joining our circle and aren't familiar with our organization, Show Me 50 is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And what we do on the right is that we work to enhance and communicate about enhancing company policies and practices to help break down those structural barriers inside companies. And then on the left, we work very closely with Lean In, which provides some awesome content to improve women's skills and confidence. And we think that the two of those things coming together, that's powerful together and enables us to achieve 50% women in leadership positions. And so you can see that we have access to a lot of content, and we've done a lot of educational presentations and engagements just like this. And then the last slide I'm going to show before I turn it over to our facilitator, Joanne, is that we are a nonprofit, and anything you can do to support us would be so welcome. So you see a QR code there where you can donate directly through PayPal, or I've got my Venmo address. Joanne, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to just turn it right over to you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I am super excited to be here with all of you today, and I'm going to lean on our Lean In team if there are comments, questions. Here we go. So I've put the following together based on a lot of years of working with folks who are often looking to make that next career move. Sometimes it's, how do I get a promotion? How do I get out of, a dead end position? And, all the different things that lead you to wanting to do more in your career. So I thought I would just start off with what this presentation will go through, give you an idea of it, and then we'll jump in. So in general, in terms of trying to get to that next career step or trying to plan 10 years down the road, this content will have these 4 steps. First, we're going to go over and have you prioritize what is actually the most important to you. We sometimes can list the things that are important, but when you actually write them down and then try to put it in priority order, it's a great thought process to really consider. Is working remote more important than pay and benefits? Is getting that promotion more important than working for a great manager with a great team? Second is a process to score different roles. And so a more mathematical way of looking at the different options and having a less biased view. Next is one of the meatier parts of trying to put that career plan into development is, where are the gaps that you have in securing that ideal role? And then lastly is taking all those different components and putting it all together into your plan. Okay, I thought it would be important to tell you a little bit about who I am and why you may want to listen to me, you may not, but let me tell you a little bit about who I am. So I just completed, I'm rounding up 29 and a half years at Microsoft. And, I basically started at an entry-level role when I was in my early 20s and finished as an executive. It was a very long and winding road, not the most direct, and I learned a ton through successes, but also lots of failures and setbacks. And throughout that time, many women came to me and said, how did you get to whatever level I was at? Help me understand how you did it so that they could try to emulate it. And so I really found that that was where my passion lied, was in working with other women to get them to achieve those goals. I saw so many women burn out, give up, just hit that wall. And as a woman in tech in a very male-dominated environment, I was always disappointed that our ratios stayed in like the 20 to 25% range. And so everything that I could do to help inspire and empower other women has been a big priority for me. I think it's important to note that I've faced so many of the challenges that many of you are facing or may face in your future, whether it's imposter syndrome, mom guilt. I do have two wonderful daughters who are both in their 20s. Certainly time management, stress, all of the different aspects. And like I said, I'm a mom of two daughters and I have been married for more than 30 years. And there's a couple of links over here if you want to check out more about me and my services through the website, or I predominantly show up on LinkedIn, so that would be another way that you can connect. Okay, so what I've done is develop 3 different resources that will be the basis for today's content. And I call it the Ultimate Career Development Toolkit. And I would encourage all of you to take a snapshot of this QR code. It's going to bring you to a site. And when you click buy, if you put in this code, it will be absolutely free at checkout. It won't even ask you for any kind of payment method. But once you do that, all 3 of these resources will be in your inbox. And then I'll be able to connect with you and send, I send a monthly newsletter out and different announcements of webinars and things like that. But you don't need to. The content here will suffice, and you can just take your own notes if you so choose. Okay, so let's jump in. I wanted to actually let you know of a recent client win. I am an executive business coach for women. I started working with a gal earlier this year, and when we first started talking to each other, she said, I feel like I'm in a dead-end job. I know I have a lot of potential, but I think I want to find that next role. We went from that point where she hadn't let anyone know she was interested in anything, had not updated her resume, had not applied for a single job, to within 12 or 11 weeks, not only having one offer, but 2 great offers, accepting one, and she's already moved into that new role. She was transferring within a company, so it's faster than what you might have if you're, leaving one company and starting another. But we use this exact process, and she was super diligent and on it. And I just want to let you know that this is possible. This might be faster than the average for sure, but putting in the time and work and this process can absolutely work for you, and it can work very quickly. Okay, so my first question for all of you, and I would love for anyone to come off mute or again put it in the chat. First question is, when you think about your current role on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest satisfaction, how would you rate your satisfaction? So again, on a 1 to 10, are you at a 6, 7? I'm going to open up the chat and see if I can follow along. Old job, Elba says 5. Maddie says 6. Elba says new life 10 plus. Awesome. Ashani's at a 7.
By the
Katya's
way,
at 3.
Joanne, you said something earlier, and I wanted to tell people your 3 files for this toolkit, everything is so practical. I was so impressed, and I shouldn't be surprised because Joanne spent 30 years at Microsoft, 29 and a half, whatever, but it's amazing. It's well worth your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, Katya, unfortunately, you're not alone. There are so many women that are anywhere from, frankly, a 1, like I have to get out right now, to, 6, 7, maybe even an 8. But really want you all to know that it doesn't have to be the case. So the second part of the question is, have you actually imagined what a 10 would look and feel like? We often tend to think about what a little bit better might look like. But realizing or visualizing what would a 10 look like can give you that sense of how big the opportunity is out there. And putting it again into words helps to articulate some of the next steps of what are those priorities? What are you searching for? Is it a job that has a ton of meaning? Is it a job where you get to be very independent? What are all the things that would have to come true for it to be a 10? And honestly, when I talk to some folks about this, they're like, oh, a 10 is unattainable. And it's not the goal to ever reach some level of perfection. But if you don't know where that North Star is, then you don't know where you are on the path. And I'll be honest with you, what's currently a 10 in maybe Katya's mind is, working in a job that she doesn't hate. As you get to further down the road and she gets from a 3 to a 6, her definition of a 10 is probably going to change. It's going to go from not only a job I don't hate, but one that I feel super respected and I'm getting paid well and I have the flexibility, right? So if you understand where I'm going, you start thinking of the 10, it helps put you on the path to what needs to change. And then as you're on that path, your definition of 10 will continue to grow along with you. Right. So first step is that brainstorming of what are the things that are important to you. When you think about that next role, that next job, next position, and this is just brainstorming, there's no prioritization yet. So just again, you guys can put it all in the chat. What are some things that come to mind for you? At the bottom of the page, I have some examples, and so I'll read some off as you're thinking about it. Generally, pay and benefits is pretty high up for a lot of folks. Upward mobility tends to be an area where folks start feeling stuck, and that's important in their next role. I'll tell you, if you've ever worked for a manager that's crummy, and there's a lot of them out there, you realize quickly how important it is to work for a great manager and obviously a good team of people that you're working around. Some folks love to have really challenging problems that they're working on. Others want to be able to, kind of clock in and clock out. And when they're done with work, it's off their mind. So there's no right answers here, but would love to invite anyone to, again, come off mute and let us know what you're thinking. Flexibility, I'm looking at the chat, opportunities for growth, pay benefits, great manager, feeling supported and appreciated. Yep, very true. Working with a team, being a strong contributor, producing fun and creative deliverables. Yeah. All right, great. So then the next step, and this is going to get maybe a little progressively harder. Now, if you have a list of 5, 6, 8, 10 things that you've listed, actually prioritizing them and putting them in a 1 to, I cap it at 6 items. And someone had recently asked me, why 6? And I had a little bit of a flippant answer of like, well, it fits easily on a page. But I think 3 or 4 is too few, 10 is too many. I think 5 to 6 is a really good number of items or criteria, characteristics for you to consider. And again, I think each one of these steps unlocks so many just new thoughts that you may not have had to push yourself to before. Are you so interested in a promotion that you'd be willing to move physical locations? Some folks are like, absolutely not. I am invested in this location. I'm not interested in moving. I have a gal that a former colleague, she's really interested in a particular role. She's someone I worked with at Microsoft, and it's an engineering role, like a software development engineer. It's like half engineering, half strategy. And she's great at the strategy part. And I said, all right, if that's the role that you want, but you don't have the second part, are you willing to go back to school to go get that part? Because as we'll find later, that gap is likely going to be so big that you're not going to be considered for that perfect role for you. 6 seems like the best number to avoid too much complexity. Yep, science shows 7 is the max you should have in a list. I didn't know that, Elba, so great. So again, whether you're using the actual PDF, which if you download the PDF, you can put stuff, you can edit it yourself, you can save it, you can modify it every 6 months. I encourage you to download these files. These are absolutely free and yours for however long you want to use them. All right, so now you've thought of your set of items and you've put them in a prioritized order. Next step becomes, how do you score them? When I was chatting with that gal who had 2 offers, they were very different roles, and she was torn. She's like, this one has these positives and negatives, the other one has different positives and negatives. How do I decide which way I want to go with this? So using the scoring really helped her think through her decision making. So again, there's the QR code and the actual code for it to be free. So I, again, encourage you to go ahead and do that. Okay, so this starts getting a little math-y. I don't think that's a word, but I'm using it. And so just to break it down into some smaller pieces. So what you're going to see is you're going to fill out what are the top 6 characteristics that you just prioritized. Right? So again, pay and benefits, flexibility, great manager, creative material, I think I saw Kelly put in, and whatever else is in here. Next question, and you'll see that I like these scoring processes. If you think of your current role, how would you rate that role against each characteristic on a 1 to 5 scale? Again, 5 being the highest. So if it's pay and benefits, is your current role 2, 3, 4? Working for a great manager, how would you score that? So for each of your current 6, what would you score your current role as on a 1 to 5? The next step is considering up to 3 other roles and asking yourself the same question. And what you're going to end up finding is, like I said, some are going to have big strengths and others may have weaknesses. And you may not know. You're filling this out with your best educated guess. Like I said, a lot of folks that I work with know their current role, and the role that they want is that promotion. They may want to go from an individual contributor to a manager. So they may know a lot about the type of work, team, etc. And so they have a very solid, educated, guess as to what these scoring numbers are. I'm going to keep going back to Elba. I like the methodology. Thank you. Okay, so you understand the process. You've got your characteristics and you've got a way to score this table. So this is an example filled out of, I don't know that it was necessarily like my set of characteristics, but I think from the gals that I work with, this ends up being fairly common maybe. So flexibility, upward mobility, pay and benefits, etc. Current role, coming up with 3 different roles, and you can see things like this particular role number 1 has a huge amount of flexibility, but it doesn't have much upward mobility. Pay and benefits is good, but it might work for not a great manager. Works in a more collaborative environment, and it is a manager level position. You can see role number 2 over here is clearly not a manager, but it has more upward mobility, pay and benefits. And again, role number 5 has great flexibility, works for a great manager, is a manager level role, and is only in the okay for some of these others. It's probably fairly common that you're looking at different roles that have different pros and cons, right? And what I would tell you is, as you're going through this, you might start feeling like, are these really the priorities? Are they in the right priority order? You can always go back and modify this. This is, again, for you to do that introspection of what are you looking for and how important is it? Okay, a little more math to throw at you. So you've filled out your scoring of the current role and these future roles. And then what ends up happening, and this is in the Excel companion, it simply does a multiplier. So what you'll end up seeing is the very first item is scored at a multiplier of 6. So flexibility, current role scored a 3, 3 times 6 is 18, right? 5 times 6 is 30. So you can understand how it's giving you now a weighted score for each of the different elements and for the total scores for each of these roles. Let me pause for a second and see if there are any comments or questions about the way this works. I don't see any hands raised or anything in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. What I'm going to point out, though, is as we talked about a second ago, so, all three of these roles score higher than the current one. So on the one hand, landing any one of them is going to be better than where I am today. And you start seeing that new role number 3, although it doesn't have the best pay and benefits or upward mobility. Upward mobility, I said, was number 2 on my list. But because works for a great manager, has a great collaborative environment, is a manager level. So it scores very strongly across a number of the elements. It actually comes out weighing the highest. So it's something to really consider of, okay, that's a much higher figure, certainly than where I am. And, you could look at any of them and again, question yourself on, is upward mobility that important? If it is, maybe it's the most important for you. And then the scoring is going to end up being different. Okay, so now that you've thought about these 3 roles and maybe you have decided that role number 3 is the role that you want to go after. That's the main direction that you want to be taking in your career path. Now I'm going to ask you to flip it and think of yourself as the hiring manager and ask, who is the employer looking for? So now if you think of that role and think, what are the characteristics that hiring manager is looking for in someone who's going to fill that role? So we knew from that prior page that the role was a manager level, as just an example. So one of the characteristics might be that you've had 5 years of managerial experience. Works in a collaborative environment, so they may need to know, a great cultural fit. It could be in the example of the gal that I was just chatting about, maybe you need a software development degree. So here are the characteristics, and sort of on the same like 1 to 5 scale, is this employer looking for, so if 1 is managerial skills, the employer might be looking for 5 years of experience. I'd say that's kind of a 2 or a 3 on that level. And then you ask yourself, where's my current skill level? Am I a 5 on that? Been doing it for 20 years, absolutely no problem? Or are you not a manager? You haven't managed people in the past, and you probably rate yourself a 1. So if you think through this table, this is going to help you identify what gaps you have and how big those gaps are. And again, just kind of scanning through the chat. So thank you, Elba, for continuing to add the content here. So I'm going to keep relating to that former colleague, and probably item 1 or 2 on that job listing was a software development degree. And she knew that they were looking for, call it a 4, and she was a 0 or a 1. Now, that's a damn big gap. And she's going to have to decide, is this really the role that she wants? And if it absolutely is, great. Now we know what she needs to do to be able to be considered for that position. And that is where, I guess that doesn't work. Let me press this button. That's where pulling it all together into a career development plan 1-pager comes to pass. So this, again, is one of the files in the toolkit that is available to you. So career goal, where are you going? And this is probably more of like, what's your long-term career aspiration? Are you, in your 20s or 30s and you want to make it to VP by 45? And then in a more recent view, what are the key accomplishments that you want to continue to remind yourself of? And this is more frequent or more recent. This is last 6 to 12 months. I'll tell you, we put key accomplishments down before we talk about any gaps or challenges because it's really easy for our brain to tell us all of the things that we need to do better and differently. But if we don't stop and really ask ourselves, what are the great qualities that we embody and the wins that we've had, we tend to blow right past this. And it's important for us to acknowledge those key accomplishments. That's the start of that confidence building of where on that prior slide you can say that you have a 4 or a 5 in that competency and be able to shine as a potential candidate for an open position. Many companies outline their kind of cultural attributes. Certainly, Microsoft was very, very focused on the cultural aspects. Having worked there for 30 years, there were probably 20 some of them where the culture was pretty terrible. And then in the last number of years, the company made a huge effort to turn that around. And so what you'll see in this table is, what are those cultural attributes and where do you feel like you are on, again, that kind of competency? Are you still learning? Are you solid, or is it a strength? This is another area where you can use that to outline your development needs. Where do you want to continue to grow and improve in your employability in these future roles? Alba, what do you mean men? Women are less likely to talk about that. Okay. Okay, so in terms of those capability summaries, so, key accomplishments may be you completed this awesome project, you launched a product, you won court cases. Oh, as I drop things. But when you think about your capabilities, those are a little broader. Those are more transferable skills, right? So managerial skills, negotiation, being able to work collaboratively across different types of teams, learn very quickly. So identifying what your strengths are from a capabilities, and then using that prior page, where do you really need to grow and improve if you want to land one of these great jobs that you've identified? Once you think about that, you really need to put it into a solid plan. So if right now you are not a manager and these roles that you're looking for are a supervisor level, what one of the objectives is going to be, improve your skills and land a job that gives you that experience. And what are the actual steps you're going to take? Now, it may be that you don't have that opportunity within your full-time work experience, but are there ways that you can show your leadership that you are developing that skill, such as some companies have interns and they're often looking for people to volunteer to, train and develop and coach new hires or interns or, early in career folks. Are there volunteer opportunities where you can take a leadership role? Like, you join your kids' PTA and they're looking for someone for the annual, carnival or something. Within the work environment, are you leading virtual teams? So you're showing that you've got the skills, again, to manage and coach others and develop that talent. And then when you think about this action plan, something that I like to remind folks is that there's a difference between having a dream and a goal. A dream is this fluffy thing that's out there kind of in perpetuity. A goal is something that has a specific outcome. It has time bounding associated with it. You have an understanding that you will hit obstacles and you are planning for how you will overcome those obstacles. And so you have to have at least those three components. And then, of course, tracking progress against that plan and adjusting as needed. but I really want to ask all of you, is this aspiration, is it a dream? Or are you taking action to make that dream a goal, a reality, and even an inevitability? I would tell you, with enough dedication, actions, and progress and modifying as you're learning what's working and what's not working, this very much can be an inevitability, that you go from, the 3, 4, 5 range into the 7, 8, 9. And then once you're in the 7, 8, 9, you're going to reassess what is that next 10 for you. And it's going to keep pushing you to grow even further. Just to round out what else is in here. So we always like to think about potential next roles. So you can think about both short term and long term, depending upon how you're filling this out. If this is the, hey, I'm 25 and I want to be a VP by 45, this development plan is going to have many, many steps in there. Your next role is going to help you with one of these steps or multiple, but it isn't going to get you all the way to that VP role in, a short period of time. But so what's your shorter term role that could help you complete these actions? And then what's longer term? And longer term, still 2 to 5 years. So it's certainly not, this forever horizon. And then the last part on here, which I think is super important, is, do you have mentors and sponsors? The difference between a mentor and a sponsor, I get this question a lot. A mentor is someone who is going to help give you some advice, coach you, tell you their perspective on how they've gotten somewhere. They're a step or two further than wherever you are on your career. And then, so they're giving you some solid advice to help you continue to progress. A sponsor is someone who generally has a little more power. They are in a room that you don't have access to. They are saying great things about you. They are recommending you for projects that are going to stretch you. They're recommending you for promotions or for other opportunities. And so this is really two different folks. Folks can start off as mentors, and if you stay, in a good enough relationship, as they maybe progress in their career, they turn into sponsors. But I really want you to think about both of these categories. And you can have an unlimited number of both of them. I'll give you an example. When I was going through this type of process years ago, I was feeling really stuck. And the manager I had at the time was awesome. And he gave me a couple of different tasks that I thought were fascinating. First was, he wanted me to go write my own job description. He said, go dream up the perfect job for you and bring that back to me. And I thought, well, that's bizarre. Like, that just seemed like too much white space. I didn't know how to handle it, but I kind of took a swag at it. And he said, all right, now go find someone who has that job today and go make them your mentor. And eventually, through that relationship building, we would love for them to become your sponsor, so that as you're showing your capabilities, you become a like next in line for that role. That person's going to be have trained you, have built that relationship, and you're learning so much more about what the job entails. And so I actually went and did that. I had said I would like a role that has, finance, business development. It's in a consumer space, A, B, C, D. And the role that I had in my head was like a financial planning role within the Xbox group in Microsoft. And I went and I had him create the introduction, because I didn't know this person that was in that role, and started working with this person. His name's Tim. He's still there at the company today. And we met 2 or 3 times over, 6, 8, 9 months. I learned a lot about the job. I learned what I wouldn't have liked about the job. So I'm kind of coming back to, when you're filling out that scoring, you're using an educated guess. And as you're networking, as you're working with mentors and sponsors, you're validating your assumptions. And some of the things that I had found out about that role, I was like, oh, okay, it has this, but it also has this other stuff that I don't want anything to do with, or I'm not ready for or interested in. And so built a great relationship with someone. Ultimately was not a role that I ended up going after in the future. Um, but I like the thought process of, if you have a role that you have a clear idea that you would love to fill, how do you go and create a relationship with someone who has that position today? And then, of course, the sponsors. I think that's where, using your network, asking for help, and getting those introductions is super, super valuable. So we've actually gone through all of the content that I had. So I wanted to just stop and say congratulations for all of you that have taken an hour out of your very busy day to think about how you want to improve your work experience. Anyone that's in, again, I would say maybe a 6 or below, I really want to encourage you to take these steps, because that's some of the first signs of like that burnout and giving up and hitting that wall. And I really want to encourage you to find something else, because the world needs your talent. The world needs more women in so many great decision-making roles. I have a super strong passion in wanting to see more women in the most senior roles that are out there in any sector that you can imagine. And anything that me, Elba, Show Me 50 can do to help inspire and promote, the successes of other women and help you get there. That's what we're here to do. And then if you found this interesting, but you're like, okay, we just hit on the surface of so many things, I want to let you all know that because this has been such a big area of where I've worked with my clients, I've decided to take this content and break it into a 3-day boot camp that actually starts tomorrow morning. And so we're going to spend an hour on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, take each of these pieces, go into more detail. I've got some more tools and techniques that we'll use, hopefully have some good conversation. And I would love to invite you to join us in this boot camp that we're going to have starting tomorrow.